Welcome to the 10th episode of Byte-Sized JavaScript. In the former episode, we learned how to be lazy using code generators. And in this episode, we will create a simple command line application that might also be used for automating our workflow. And since our project will be related to automation, I decided to name it Octomate. So what will Octomate do for us? It will first read a repository URL from the command line and then run a set of NPM scripts. And when all the scripts exit successfully, then it will publish the project to NPM by using NPM publish. To begin, we'll first create an empty repository and then we'll clone it and then open the folder that we have cloned just now in our IDE. Then we'll make a really simple wrapper around the console object inside this lib/log module. And this way, if we want to use a different logging library such as Banyan or Winston or any other library so to speak, we can replace it here without having to replace all the console log statements inside our code. And lib/octomate.js will contain our actual command line application code. And since we are going to fetch repositories and execute tasks on them, we'll need a temporary folder to install them in the first place. So let's create it. And now let's write down what we want to do first. We'll do some initial workspace setup. Then we'll want to parse the command line arguments to learn the repository name from it. Then we'll want to clone into the current master branch of that repository. Then we'll get the current version number of that repository from the package.json. After that, we'll retrieve the current version of that repository from NPM. And then we'll compare this version to what we have in the package.json as a version number. And if the version number of the package.json is different from the version number that we fetch from NPM, we'll first run npm install, then npm test. And if both of these commands, namely npm install and npm test, exit successfully without raising any errors, then and only then we'll run npm publish to publish the most recent version of our package to npm. And since we have chained all the functions by then methods, all of those functions will need to return promises. And our workspace will be inside a temporary folder. And to prepare our workspace, we'll remove the temp folder first, if it exists already. And then we'll create a brand new and empty temporary folder so that we don't have to deal with the remainder files and modules, which might be leftovers from a former execution. So next we'll find the URL and pass the URL as a resolution value to our promise. And the next method will take that URL and clone the repository for us. And in order to clone this repository, we'll be using child process module to shell out and call some git commands. So we will clone the repository URL inside our temp folder. And when the command is completed successfully, we will resolve with this URL and proceed to the next step in our pipeline. And in the next step, we'll first get the package name by doing a regular expression match on the URL. And then we'll read the package.json of the project inside our workspace, parse it as a JSON and get the name and version number out of it, and then we'll do a npm info on our package and compare the version that we get out of npm info with the version number that we have inside the package.json. And if the remote version that we get out of npm and the local version that we get out of package.json are identical, then we'll set a skip flag to true to skip the remainder of the process. Otherwise, we'll resolve our promise with the name of the repository and we'll execute a bunch of npm scripts on that repository. The set of commands that we'll be running on the repository will be npm install, npm test, and npm publish. And I don't know you, but to me all of those commands look quite similar. So let's factor them out into a common method and call the method, I don't know, execute npm command maybe. And the execute npm command method will take the command name, the name of our module, the resolve and reject callbacks from the promise, and finally the skip flag that we have set as its arguments. And if the skip flag is truthy, we'll continue without running any commands, and otherwise we'll be executing different tasks based on the name of the command. And that should do it. Let's make a simple test shell script to test what we have done so far. So let's first change the mode of the files in our bin folder to be executable by the current user, and then install the required libraries for the transpilation to work. And then we'll be running bin/transpile.js to create the transpiled files in the release folder. We'll also fix a minor bug that we have here and here. And now when we run our test script, we get this error. The reason is we forgot to pass the name of our package as a parameter. Those kinds of bugs are quite easy to miss in a larger project and can go unnoticed for a long time even inside the production code. That's why you need testing. And we'll talk about unit tests in the later episodes, so stay tuned. But for now, let's fix our code. So let's transpile our code once again and run it once more. And now it looks like working. So we'll update the repository version and then try if it actually publishes to the NPM. Well, we did it, with a tiny little problem. Nobody can make any sense out of this gibberish that you see on the console. And as it turns out, using a template string helps us decode those buffers into human-readable strings, which fixes our problem. So let's transpile, increase the repository version number and run the code once again. And now it works like a charm. So we can happily publish Octomate to GitHub as well. And I think that's a good point to stop. To summarize, in this episode we have created a simple Node.js command line application that runs NPM scripts to automatically publish our code to NPM. And in the next episode we'll do some extra work to integrate Octomate with Buddy, which is a continuous deployment and integration tool that I really like. So until then, may the source be with you.